Herbert Zearing was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania on June 6, 1947. He was the oldest of 5 children born to Herbert Zearing Sr. and June Martin. Herbert Zearing Sr. was a machinist for the Pennsylvania Railroad, later renamed Norfolk Southern Railroad, while June Martin was a housekeeper. Later in life, she worked at various part-time jobs, but she was a stay-at-home mother for the majority of Mr. Zearing's childhood. Although none of his siblings served in the military, Mr. Zearing's father did. Mr. Zearing was drafted into the United States Army during the Vietnam War. Mr. Zearing's military service began with basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia. After completing basic training, Mr. Zearing was sent to Fort Polk, Louisiana for advanced infantry training. During this time, Mr. Zearing recalls training in gas chambers and participating in survival training.
It's like they put us out in the woods by ourselves.
Mr. Zearing was recommended for officers' candidate schools several times during basic and infantry training. Each time he turned the offer down. When Mr. Zearing arrived in Vietnam, he became a radio operator.
I was a radio operator for the squad leader. And eventually ended up being the radio operator for the platoon leader, the company commander, and then I had the company commander's battalion radio for a while, and then eventually I became the radio operator for the battalion commander.
Mr. Zearing had no previous training as a radio operator. He worked primarily in the field until his time as the battalion commander's radio operator. As the battalion commander's radio operator, he worked primarily in the base camp. The battalion commander had about 4 radio operators who took turns at the battalion operator's TOC, Technical Operations Center. One of them would be there at all times. Mr. Zearing was involved in the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. During the Tet Offensive, he was sent to a Marine base in Quezon Son that was under siege by the North Vietnamese. He was involved in a campaign to free the base, and was also involved in a combat assault outside the city of Hue. His last few months in Vietnam, he was near Saigon operating the battalion commander's radio. There were various other companies of the battalion operating from the same base at this time. Mr. Zearing received a Purple Heart Award for shrapnel wounds he received during a mortar rocket attack. He also received a Bronze Star, 2 Vietnam Service Medals, an Air Medal for combat assault, and a Good Conduct Medal. During his service, Mr. Zearing stayed in contact with his girlfriend, currently his wife, his parents and siblings, and several friends from his hometown. His girlfriend wrote him a letter every day he was away. While stationed in Fort Hood, Texas, Mr. Zearing learned to roller skate. He also visited the Alamo, some of his girlfriend's family in San Antonio, and his future brother-in-law during his Air Force training. He would also fly home for a day to a day and a half so that he could visit with friends and family. While traveling home from Vietnam for a 30-day leave, Mr. Zearing had to take 4 planes, a bus, and a car ride to get home. He had to pay for 3 of these planes himself. When he arrived home for a break, he celebrated Christmas with his family and was present for his sister's wedding. After his leave, he reported to Fort Hood, where he was placed in an armory unit and taught to drive a tank and fire the guns. Mr. Zearing got a job with the state government where he worked for the rest of his career. He said that he tries not to complain about things because I'd like to thank Mr. Zearing for his service in the time of our country's great need for protection and help.